Hey, what's up YouTube? This is Toad, and today we're going to be talking about having different personalities or different aspects of your character depending on who you're around. So different people meaning different versions of you. And also, have you ever wondered that if you're a different version of yourself around each person that you meet, if you're around new people, that's a different version. If you're around people that you know very well, that's a different version. If you're around your parents, that's a different version. If you're around your kids, that's a different version. Have you ever wondered which one is the actual you, if there is such a thing as an actual you? Because once again, humans like to define themselves when they're not really a defined thing. Humans are not like a line, they're not like a 3D shape, but actual thing. Essentially, you could never see all sides of a person at the same time. So first of all, let's get into what actually causes you to have different aspects of your personality shine when you're around different people. So first thing is how those different people that you're interacting with affect your emotional state, because everybody knows that whatever emotion that you're feeling is going to greatly impact your behavior. That's how humans are. So your behavior changes based on the emotion that you're feeling. So if you're around someone that makes you feel extremely happy, then you might be a more giddy person around them. But maybe if you were around that person constantly, that effect would wear off and you'd become back into a more natural state of being, where it's like kind of an even balance. Or maybe if you're around someone that makes you feel extremely angry, okay, then you're going to feel extremely angry around that person, and you'll have a more stern or cold kind of personality around them. Okay, so different emotions are going to affect your behavior. But then, over time, because humans like to develop habits and programs to habituate reality, make it a little bit more simple to walk through it, that way we can learn and do new things without having to worry about all the other old things that we've already learned. So you go into autopilot. This means that if someone constantly made you feel angry for years, then you might still feel angry around them, even if the behavior that caused you to feel angry around them has stopped. Meaning that your personality around that specific person is going to be much more unplayful, stern, and strict than it would be otherwise if you were not on autopilot in that sense. And the same thing applies if you're around someone that makes you extremely happy, is that if they made you happy for a very long time to be around them, and now they're doing some sort of behavior that's actually extremely toxic, like in the long run they're bringing your mood down after you're not even around them anymore, but you still have the habituation that being around that person makes you feel good, then your brain is going to continue to release those endorphins and norepinephrine until you realize the pattern of them bringing you down, okay? Now, even another thing other than that is different aspects of people's personality affecting another person's different aspect of their personality. So depending on where or what circumstance you're around a person with, now they say first impressions are really important, so when you meet a person for the first time, you want it to be a comfortable situation. That way your behavior can be completely accurate to what you actually are, or at least what you're trying to portray to be to this person. But since situations can affect one person's behavior, they also affect everybody else's behavior. So say you're at a party, and at a party, most people are kind of going to feel a little bit awkward actually when the party first starts, because it's like, oh, I'm around all these people and I don't know 50% of them, or maybe even more, and so it's uncomfortable, it's kind of tense until someone breaks the ice, or, you know, in America, until someone breaks out the booze and everyone's, you know, inhibitions completely drop out the window and they end up doing something stupid. But if you were to meet someone for the first time at a party when they're most uncomfortable, they're going to be on their best behavior so as to avoid social punishment for maybe something that they believe or act like, which would be socially unacceptable. Whereas if you were around someone in a less clustered area, that has less social pressure and less peer pressure, then you'd be able to get more of an accurate scope of what they would act like in a comfortable situation. But then again, you also are two new people to each other, so in both situations, your behavior is going to be very different toward each other because you're new. So people end up creating ingenuine connections with other people and creating personalities that they cannot sustain for a long time because of the amount of energy that it takes to uphold that version of themselves. And another thing is that when you have a personality, especially if this takes place on a greater scale, if you're more so segregated in your mind than other people, and so you have very very different versions of yourself that display themselves depending on what situation you're in, then that's going to make people that actually know you, that might even know the real you, it's going to make them very uncomfortable, because people like to know who it is that they're dealing with or what it is that they're dealing with. So if you add an aspect of uncertainty, like a personality that can go from here to all the way over here, people are going to feel not only bamboozled, but almost like you're breaking a fourth wall of human emotion that's going to make them feel uneasy. So people aren't going to really trust you as much then. So even if your personality is switching or toggling like that as a response to some trauma that you had or this or that, it's still going to make people uncomfortable that your personality is going. Now keep in mind, everyone's personality is going to slightly shift intensity and size and arrangement when they're in different situations around people, making them have different emotions. What I'm actually referring to is when people can have huge spectrums of different behavior depending on who they're around and be completely unaware of it. So they can have a version of themselves that's 100% designed for business, a version of themselves that's 100% designed for this person, and another version of themselves completely designed for this situation. And all of them coexist together without interacting with each other at all, and they just flip-flop, essentially. That's the kind of uncanny behavior that I'm talking about. Now, before I get into how to actually unify these different aspects or parts of your personality, I first want to explain how I actually came up with this topic for the video, because what was happening is essentially I was surfing through the Ethernet, or the mind internet. I was surfing through a collection of thoughts and ideas that were firing about from other people and from people that were having dreams or being asleep. I was essentially in the ethereal plane surfing through all these different ideas that were floating past. And that's when I realized that by accident I had already kind of unified these different aspects of my personality to have one actual version of myself. So I kind of unified those parts together already. But I was surfing through other people's lives. Now, this is not the same thing as going to a parallel universe, but I was surfing through their experiences or their memories, essentially, that were, you know, available to be accessed in the ethereal plane. And I realized that in all these people's memories, the major trend was that depending on the person that they were around, their personality completely shifted to a different thing. And never was anybody ever aware of this. I was just watching it happen in these people's memories. And I was like, wow, I really need to make a video about that, because this is kind of important. So that's where the topic for this video actually came from. Step 1 to unifying the different parts of your mind that display themselves depending on situation is by imagining one situation or one person as being another situation or another person, and asking yourself, what would I do if I were in this situation? And by proxy, you're also asking yourself in an indirect way that can actually be, you know, mathed out in your brain, which person would do what action in this circumstance? Because everyone has different egos that kind of create themselves, kind of like spuds growing off potatoes. It's not the whole potato, but they are going to be potatoes if you keep allowing them to separate and segregate. So if you live to 1,000 years old, you might be, you know, one of those people that are completely... So say you're around someone that makes you extremely angry, okay? While they are talking, doesn't matter what they're saying, okay? It doesn't even matter if they're talking or not, but while you're around them, imagine them being someone else who makes you extremely happy, and imagine, well, actually notice how your behavior changes depending on who you're imagining who as. And you have to have a pretty strong imagination for this, but really it's not that hard to imagine someone as being someone else. You probably do it a lot more than you actually think. Now this applies to situations as well. So if you're in a really uncomfortable situation with a bunch of people that you don't know, and it's making you really tense, then imagine, what if you did know all those people? Just like create an imaginary circumstance in your head where you know everybody there, and you're all super close, and then watch how your personality changes, and all that pressure that you have on your own shoulders completely releases. And eventually, after doing this, after unifying each circumstance, and each person, depending on, you know, how many different variations of the same ego you have kind of shining at different times, your personality becomes unified in that you'll have the same basic program no matter who you're around or what situation you're in, and you can be completely genuine because you can actually notice when your personality begins to shift that way. So, last message, okay? I have exclusive content that only gets uploaded on TikTok, which is, you know, 3-minute videos. Now, the majority of the time, yes, I just use it for the face filters and upload completely contentless videos that aren't really even meant to get views. I'm just using the filters. But also, I do upload things that only get uploaded on TikTok. So if you're interested in that, I will have my profile down in the description of this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like, subscribe, comment, and share. Goodbye.